Witch hunts are one of the dark sides of European and American history, evoking images of fear, persecution, and chaos. While many of us may think of Salem as the place most associated with witch hunts, this grim side of history was not confined to one time or place. It unfolded across centuries and spanned multiple continents, leaving a dark legacy in its wake. From ancient witchcraft trials to the famous witch hunt in Salem, the history of witch hunts is as extensive as it is dark. Keep watching to learn about the dark legacy of witch hunts across the ages. Witchcraft in ancient times. While the existence of witchcraft and the fear of witches is not as well documented in ancient times as in more recent years, ancient civilizations in Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome have left us an idea of how the people of this time viewed witches, witchcraft, and magic. In ancient Mesopotamia, for example, it seems that magic went hand in hand with religion. Instead of viewing them as separate things, magic was included in their religion. For instance, magic could be used to combat the curse that resulted from unknowingly committing a sin and losing the favor of one's god or goddess. The Mesopotamians also believed in malevolent magic, and laws like the Code of Hammurabi included punishments for sorcery. In ancient Greece, witchcraft accusations appeared in literature and legal codes, with famous cases like that of Theoris of Lemnos, an alleged witch who was executed after being accused of practicing harmful magic. This case took place in the 4th century BCE in Athens, and it is one of the only witch trials we have records of from the 5th and 4th centuries BCE. Their views on witches were also displayed in their ancient works. Homer's Odyssey, written in the 8th century BCE, featured a mythological witch named Circe, who turns men into animals. In fact, several witches are featured in Greek myth, most of which are portrayed as malevolent characters. Similarly, in Rome, the set of laws called the 12 Tables, or the Law of the 12 Tables, prohibited magic spells, reflecting the Roman belief in the dangers of witchcraft. Specifically, these laws prohibited singing or creating harmful incantations under the Laws of Injury section. While these early examples of witchcraft and trials are sporadic and either rare or not well documented, they began to lay the groundwork for later witch hunts. These early accusations didn't seem to be tied to the same kind of mass hysteria as later witch hunts, though. However, they still introduced a legal system prepared to punish the accused. The legal system of Rome especially had an impact, as many of its core values transferred to Christian law. The Late Middle Ages. While the concept of witchcraft and sorcery certainly existed in the Middle Ages, the near hysteria surrounding them would not develop for another 2 centuries. In 1300, witches were not necessarily associated with black magic, covens, or devil worship like they would come to be by the 1500s. Instead, it was much more loosely defined. The official position of the Christian Church of that time was that sorcery and witchcraft were discouraged, but they were not seen as inherently evil. Thus, witches did not warrant active persecution. Magic was quite common in the Middle Ages, and it was widely seen by the Church as a misguided superstitious belief. It was dismissed as a pagan superstition. The Church was much more concerned with heresy and heretical groups than they were about witches. There are minimal persecutions of witches or sorcerers, and the ones that exist are typically linked to heresy, not just witchcraft. One example is a woman named Alice Keitler, an Irish woman accused in 1324. She was not just accused of practicing magic, but of maleficia, which is evil or harmful magic. She was also charged with belonging to a heretic group, which is significant because it suggests that the Church still dismissed witches as not worth prosecuting unless heresy was involved. This changed as the 1500s drew closer. By the late 1400s, the association between witchcraft and devil worship had become much stronger, and more accusations against witches and sorcerers were being made as the Church became more concerned about witchcraft. The first organized witch hunt on any scale began in 1428 in Valais, Switzerland. Over 350 witches were hunted down and killed over 8 years, although many of these witches were male rather than female. All that was needed for condemnation was for at least 3 neighbors to publicly state that someone was a witch. Accusations still tended to include heresy instead of just witchcraft, suggesting that even at this stage, it was difficult to imagine a conspiracy of witches without some underlying heretical belief at its heart. While many factors went into the increased fear and hatred against witches, One of the largest was a book called Malleus Maleficarum, written by Heinrich Kramer. He was a German church inquisitor, obsessed with the danger of witchcraft. He even attempted to put several women on trial as witches before his trials were shut down by his immediate superior, who believed that Kramer's accusations were unfounded and that Kramer himself was unstable and paranoid. Too determined to be stopped, Kramer published a book to promote his views on witchcraft. That book, Malleus Maleficarum, created a cohesive and comprehensive account of the most radical view on witchcraft available at the time. It also had the good fortune to be published when mass printing became available, ensuring widespread circulation. As a result, it would significantly impact how witches were identified, tried, and punished. The clergy condemned it at the time, but it would go on to provide a blueprint for the witch hunts that would erupt across Europe. The European witch hunts. The most infamous witch hunts took place during the early modern period. Between 1450 and 1750, an estimated 50,000 people were executed for witchcraft in Europe. The exact number of executions is unknown. The witch hunts were characterized by religious conflict, social upheaval, rapidly changing legal systems, and relentless witch hunters. One of the most significant witch trials of this time took place in Bamberg, Germany, over the course of 5 years, from 1626 to 1631. Of the 1,000 people convicted as witches, between 300 and 600 were burned at the stake. This witch hunt did not discriminate based on age, gender, or class. Men and women, young and old, rich and poor, were condemned and punished alike. In England, witchcraft was criminalized as a felony under the Witchcraft Act of 1542 and made punishable by death. The notorious Matthew Hopkins, the self-proclaimed witch-finder general, conducted brutal witch trials in the 1640s, often relying on dubious methods like swimming tests. The swimming test involved flinging the accused into a body of water with their hands bound. Because a witch would have denied their baptism, they would be repelled by the water and float instead of sinking beneath the surface. He also got villagers and townspeople in Essex, Suffolk, and Norfolk to hire him for a fee to search out witches and punish them for their crimes. Scotland also witnessed severe persecution, with the North Berwick witch trials of 1590 to 91 serving as one of Scotland's earliest large-scale hunts. These trials are now famous for their brutality, as the accused were horrifically tortured. These trials involved accusations of plotting against King James VI. He had been delayed in collecting his new bride, Anne of Denmark, by dangerous storms that he was convinced were the doing of witches. King James's hatred and obsession with witches and witchcraft became well known. Salem and beyond, witch hunts in the colonies. The Salem witch trials in Colonial, Massachusetts, are perhaps the most infamous witch trial in American history. Compared to some of the witch trials in Europe, it was relatively small, but it left its mark on the nation for centuries. Over 200 people were accused, and 20 were executed. There were a lot of motivations behind these accusations, from fear of the devil to religious fervor to personal vendettas. These infamous trials began in the spring of 1692 in Salem Village, when a group of young girls claimed to be possessed by the devil. They accused several local women of witchcraft, blaming the witches for their state. As a result, a wave of hysteria spread throughout Colonial, Massachusetts, and a special court convened in Salem to hear the cases of the convicted women. The first convicted witch, Bridget Bishop, would be hanged in June, and 18 others would follow in her footsteps to Salem's Gallows Hill. Over the next few months after her death, 150 more men, women, and children were accused. By that September, the hysteria began to ease, and the public no longer wanted any part in the trials. Although the Massachusetts General Court later annulled the guilty verdicts and indemnities were granted to the families of those convicted, the painful legacy of the Salem witch trials had endured for generations. While the Salem witch trials tend to be the most famous witch hunt in the colonies, they weren't the only one. Individuals were also tried and executed for witchcraft in earlier trials in Connecticut and New York. One happened 30 years before the Salem witch trials, and it is acknowledged as the first American witch hunt. The Hartford witch hunt began in March 1662, with the unfortunate and unexplained death of an 8-year-old girl. The girl was completely fine just days before she passed away, and the parents grasped at any explanation for her tragic loss, eventually seeing the hand of the devil at work through their neighbor, Goodwife Ayres. The parents were convinced that their daughter, Elizabeth, had been fatally possessed by Goodwife Ayres. They claim that the first night after returning home one day with Ayres, she became ill and exclaimed that Ayres was upon her, choking, pinching, and bruising her. Understandably, hysteria gripped the town, and they held 7 trials and 4 executions. One husband and wife were indicted for not having the fear of God before thine eyes, alongside accusations of a familiarity with the devil. Rebecca Greensmith, the wife, confessed guilt in court, but her husband, Nathaniel Greensmith, protected his innocence. Unfortunately, they both met the same end at the town's gallows. Fortunately for the rest of the state's residents, these 4 executions were the last in Connecticut. There would be more witch trials, but they would not end in death for the accused. The decline of witch hunts. By the late 17th and early 18th centuries, witch hunts finally began to wane. Laws were introduced across Europe to help bring about the end of the trials. In Great Britain, the Witchcraft Act of 1735 revoked all previous witchcraft acts, such as the one that deemed witchcraft a felony punishable by death, and ruled that witchcraft was not a crime. The rise of Enlightenment thought, with its emphasis on reason over superstition, alongside changes in legal systems, such as requiring more substantial evidence for conviction, also brought about a decline in the hunts. High-profile cases, such as the wrongful conviction of Bridget Bishop in Salem, raised awareness of the dangers of mass hysteria and flawed trials. However, no amount of reparation can erase the horrors of the witch hunts in Europe and the colonies. Witch hunts represent some of humanity's darkest chapters, driven by fear, ignorance, and power struggles. As we remember their dark legacy, they should remind us of the dangers of unchecked hysteria and prejudice. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about witch hunts and the other dark sides of history, check out our book, The Salem Witch Hunt, a captivating guide to the hunt and trials of people accused of witchcraft in Colonial, Massachusetts. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free Mythology Bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.